Hey everyone, welcome to this video tutorial. This is methods in context, using observation to investigate racism in school. And this tutorial will walk you through how to think in context, starting with the method applied to the school and ending with that context. Quick reminder about what the method in context is. It is worth 20 marks. You spend 30 minutes on this answer. The instruction is to use an item for hooks as well as the strengths and weaknesses of the method. And the main focus is to apply to the context of education. Some important points to consider. Students answering need to consider the characteristics of the people, the group, the students and the teachers being studied and how it may impact on the research. Therefore, show good AO1 of the method and the characteristics of research. AO2, apply it to the school and the context in the question and using the item and their own knowledge. And AO3, evaluate strengths, weaknesses, faults and pitfalls of studying the group in the question. The main point of this video is to ensure that you are discussing the characteristics of the people, the group, the students and teachers being studied and how it may impact the research. So the context and the method this video will explore is evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of using observation to investigate racism within school. To help you plan for this answer, you can download this grid or you can copy it out and it'll just mean that you can fill it in as you go along. So firstly, let's consider the method. In this case, it is observation. So you've got a pause it task. I want you to spend a little bit of time reviewing the PET, the practical, ethical, theoretical issues of using observation in educational research. When you're ready, join back in. So here's some of the practical, ethical, theoreticals that you might have come up with. So practically, can you get access to the group? So think about getting in, staying in and getting out when you are doing the observation. It's really important to consider the researcher characteristics. So do they need to have a good memory? Do they have physical characteristics that will allow them to blend in? Do they need that? Is it covert? Is it overt? And obviously, we have got the time and the cost to participate in that type of research. Ethically, do you get informed consent? Are you going covert? Is it overt? Is there going to be any harm to the participants? Are you going to keep their confidentiality when you publish your research? What's the long-term effect of that research? And theoretically, what might impact the validity? So one of the things is the Hawthorne effect, where people change their behaviour just by virtue of being watched. What about when you are analysing what you have observed? There is subjectivity with this, so you've got to interpret it. Are you interpreting people's behaviour in the way that it was intended? There is a lack of reliability. Is it hard to replicate? Sometimes observations are. And is it representative? Often they tend to be a small snapshot. This method is preferred by interpretivist, positivist, less so. So secondly, let's consider the issues within the school. So we've got another pause it task. Can we apply some of the PET to a school context? Pause it now, and when you're ready, join back in. So firstly, we've got the head teacher, who is often referred to as the gatekeeper. They may refuse access for you to participate in some sort of observation. Timetabling, when are you going to observe? Who are you going to observe? Will you get access to them? Is it during exam time? Is it lesson times? Places like the staff room is hard to access, as may be some other places, such as some classrooms, but other places you might have a bit more free rein, such as the canteen or the playground. What about ethical and legal issues? Well, students are a vulnerable group. They are under 16. So schools do have a duty of care to protect them. And there are certain topics that are related to students which are considered sensitive. In the case of this tutorial, we're focusing on racism. But it's also important that you should remember that you are researching racism and discrimination. This might have a long-term effect on the students' achievement. We know the effect of teacher racism on black boys, for example. And also, if you want to get into a school, you will need a valid DBS check. What about issues that might affect the validity of research. Well, some students may see the researcher as a teacher in disguise, but so might teachers. They might think that you're spying on them for the head teacher. There may be peer pressure. Students that might volunteer might be more pro-school. Likewise, teachers that have got nothing to hide might volunteer. They might say, yeah, of course, come into my classroom, do a little bit of observation. Speech codes, do you need special skills to understand what the students are saying? Do they speak in restricted codes, English as a second language, local dialects? Do you recognise the difference between the students being told off or being discriminated against? All these will impact the validity. And then finally, what I'd like you to do now, do another pause it task. You can choose one of the points below and apply it to the context in the question. So start to have a think about how might some of these actually impact doing an observation onto racism within school. I have done one there for you to get you thinking. Okay. Join back in when you're ready. So now you should have a little bit of an idea about observation, the school context, and you should have spent a little bit of time having a go at trying to apply it to the context of the question, which is racism in school. So how do we go about writing your essay then? How do we go about doing it? So I got this off the internet. I can't remember. I think I just Googled it. And this is just a nice way to structure a methods in context essay. So it's always a nice idea to do an introduction. I prefer you to do one just because you get some of the method out of the way and you do need it to score quite well on this answer, even though you get more marks for writing in the context. But you need the method as well. And then split them up into practical, ethical, theoretical. So that's why I've asked you to do that in the previous pause it activities. And try to address the school context and the question as well, the context in the question whilst you are doing these. So a good introduction gives the main qualities or characteristics of the method, states who prefers it and the type of data it produces. And I've given you an example of a introduction for observation here. So it's a method that's favoured by interpretativists, tick, as it meets their main goal of validity. It's seeing directly the reality of a person's life. We've got some characteristics of it. It can be overt or covert. Typically in a school, it usually is overt. You will notice if there is another person in the classroom. However, you might not know what they are observing. You might not know the reasons why they're observing. So you could argue that's a little bit covert as well. And it's usually non-participant. It's a primary method and it gains rich and in-depth qualitative data. So we've got lots of method there out of the way, and that just means that you can focus your main paragraphs of being into that context. So just to remind you about it there. So now we're going to start to look at the main body, the main paragraphs of your answer. So I would start off by giving something about the method. Start off with a strength. That's often quite good because usually when you start to go into context, you become a little bit more critical about that method. For example, an ethical strength of this method is explain it, and you will get awarded a B3. Then you can apply it to the context. Is there ethical barriers to studying in a school? That's also B3. We're not really in the context of the question yet, but we're getting there. And then try to link to the issues in the question, racism within school. Maybe tell me something about that, a characteristic about it. You might need to think back to your ethnicity topic and then apply it to a social group. So who you're talking about, who you're observing. Are you observing teachers, the pupils, parents? And what might be the long-term effect on this research? Will it impact the validity? Will it impact whether it's representative? Will it have a long-term impact on the participants? Will it cause harm? Anything like that. So let's have a look at an example paragraph for you then to have a go at your own. An ethical strength of views and observation is that if it's overt, you've gained permission or consent from the participant. However, in a school context, this might be difficult as you would need permission of the head teacher to gain access to the students in order to observe them. So that in itself is a band 3 answer. So we want to go into context. Remember, the context is observation of racism within school. So why might the head teacher refuse access? The head teacher may refuse access because the school might have had issues of racism within the past, or attitudes towards some ethnic groups have been negative, which makes the school look bad. And because of marketisation and the image the school portrays, racism will put parents off, which will mean the head teacher refused permission. So we've taken that band 3 to a band 4 because we're talking about doing research within a school to do and something to do with the issue of racism. If you do get permission to observe lessons, some teachers, possibly ones who may act in a racist way, may refuse consent to being observed because it's their place of work and they want to protect their image as a good teacher and not show that discriminative behaviour towards pupils such as black students. So we're starting to nudge it into that context. Okay, to secure it as a band 5 answer, you would have to be really explicit about the impact of observation rather than being research in general. So as a follow-up, consider the different places observation might take place. So for example, classrooms, playgrounds, staff rooms, and remember, some places might be off limits and the different people who might be observed as well. So you could observe teachers, racism within teachers, TAs, also students as well. They might be racist towards each other, for example. Consider the different situations, so lessons, lunchtimes, parents' evening, admissions. We know racism is inbuilt within the school system, so it might not even just be observing actual lessons, it might be observing racist practices. Meetings to investigate racism as well. Will you get access to that? And you could also consider issues such as the Hawthorne effect and why. Why might the topic of racism affect the Hawthorne effect and changing people's behaviour? Why might it do that? What impact might you have on the outcome of the research, impacting validity? But also, racism and discrimination is a very serious legal issue as well. So if you are observing racism, bullying, anything like that, what do you do with that? It create some sort of guilty knowledge? Do you tell the head teacher or do you observe the confidentiality that we mentioned before in terms of observation? Okay, so to finish off, complete the table that I shared with you before, as this will allow you to fully plan and really think about the observation, applying it to the school context, and some of really develop it into the context which is in the question, and then have a go at writing your answer. Just to take you back, you should be spending 30 minutes on this answer and it is worth 20 marks, and the main focus is to apply it to the context in education. So massive thank you for watching. I've got other videos on this. I've even included a link to other playlists that you might find useful. So for example, I've got a playlist about methods in context. I've got a playlist about how to revise sociology. I've got a playlist about the different papers. So please utilize those and thank you for watching. Bye.